was a time where I did not like reading fiction. There was a time where I didn't think there was much to be gained from it. Where now I think I prefer fiction at this point. And here are books that left me speechless. Here are books that gave me the answers that I thought I could find in nonfiction, the answers that I thought I could find in philosophy or various other texts. And really, you can only get certain aspects of life through a story. So here are the stories that I just I could speak about them, but I would fail to hit their depth. I would fail to get to the root of exactly what they are trying to say. And the first thing I want to talk about is Dune. Dune on the surface is just a sci-fi story, but it's the little things that Frank Herbert puts into the story. It's the little things that he has behind the scenes. It's the deep mythos. It's the secret societies. It's the eugenics cult. It's the idea of a hero. It's his distrust of a hero. It's the cyclical nature of political movements that he includes in the entire series as a whole, not just the one book of Dune. But there's just so many little things where you could tell Frank Herbert's trying to say something about society. He's doing it through perhaps one of the greatest told stories that has ever been written. And Frank Herbert actually never finished the Dune series. He died before it was able to be wrapped up, but it's almost perfect. It's almost ironic in a sense that he is writing a story that can't be finished and he didn't finish it. Like it's somewhat tragic, but there's somewhat beauty to it. But really, what Dune has to offer is a great tale, a great story, and an underpinning message of don't put your faith in other people beyond what they are capable of. Don't put your faith into a hero. Don't put a mythic scale to a mere mortal and give them all of the ability to take control of absolutely everything and what that can lead to. And the interesting thing that Herbert writes about is that essentially his protagonist Paul Atreides is seen like this Christ-like figure, this hero, this mythic, foretold person who could see the future, who had perception beyond what is even fathomable by our means. But he's also just a person in and of himself, and he has flaws, and he's treated like he is this savior. He's treated like he's this hero, but horrible things are done in his name. He doesn't necessarily agree with the jihad that happens because he comes to power. And all sorts of these themes are just wrapped up into the story, and you just become enthralled in this world. It rivals The Lord of the Rings in terms of its lore. It really does. And I thoroughly enjoy it. But on to the next thing. The next thing we have is Blood Meridian. This is one of the most brutal books I've ever read. I don't know what else to say aside from it. I saw somewhere online that half of Blood Meridian is the author Cormac McCarthy just describing the beauty of the West, and the other half is just the most brutal fights that you can ever even imagine, and just some of the most wicked people that you could even imagine. It's just there's something to it. There's a weight to it, and really the central idea of the book is Victor's history, what it took to win the West, and the real world versus the idealized world, which we like to think of. And that's a theme that you'll see constantly come up in Cormac McCarthy's work, whether it's No Country for Old Men, whether it's The Road. I mean, a real central theme is that there's the world which most people live in, and then there's the reality, which is far more brutal, which we try to avoid. And it's balancing between the two. It's understanding that there's some necessity for brutality, but there's something that comes out of it that could be better. And it's very special. The most interesting aspect of this book to me is that there is a character named the Judge. You don't, is he real? Is he not? Is he just a foil? Is he just the embodiment of pure evil? There's all sorts of questions like this. Is he literally the devil? It's you can go into these ideas all day long, but it's just so fascinating, and I really think it's something well worth your time to read. It's not that long, and by the end of it, you'll be like, I don't know what I just read. There's something very intense here, and there's something very raw here and very real. And yeah, it's just one of those books that you're like, yep, I can check that off the list, and I understand why people enjoyed it so much. Next thing we have is The Old Man and the Sea. I didn't know what to expect with this book. Frankly, I'm very bored by very mundane books. It's very difficult for me to read stuff that don't have a somewhat mythic scale to it, we'll say, or somewhat the book's about everything and anything all at once, and that sort of thing. But The Old Man in the Sea is interesting because it's really a story about a man that goes out fishing, a man that's well past his prime in terms of his physical capabilities, but he has the skill, he has the attributes to use. It's that idea of think harder, not smarter, or work smarter, not harder. Sorry, it's been a long morning already. But really, what it's about is about the undying human spirit and the will to live, and the not Schopenhauer's will to live, the will to fight, the will to go out into the world and push the boundaries and actually live your life to the fullest and not have any regrets. And I don't want to spoil the story, but it's about the perseverance of the human soul, and it's very short, and there's a deep underlying philosophy to it that is very inspirational, and it's quite sad the way that Hemingway went out, because it kind of makes this story bittersweet, because he wasn't able to live his life to the fullest. He wasn't able to go about it in the way that the man from the Old Man in the Sea went about it. I don't know why I'm tongue tied right now. Next thing we have is Ficciones or Fictions by Jorge Luis Borges. I've been saying Borges forever, but it's Borges. That's what I've learned. Hopefully I'm saying that right as well. I probably am not. But Fictions, I'm just gonna call it Fictions. Fictions is a collection of short stories, and essentially what Borges tries to do is he tries to create an idea that's even impossible to imagine. And through doing this, he's able to capture paradoxes, and he's able to capture the dreamlike state that is reality. The idea that, can we ever know the actual world? Can we ever know the real truth? Is it even possible for us to understand everything and anything all at once? And these are ideas that, obviously, if you've watched anything on the channel, I'm deeply fascinated by. And I read this, and I immediately became a fan of this after I read the very first story. And the book's interesting because you read stories, and some of them will really resonate with you. Some of them are not as interesting, and that's just what you're going to get with short stories. But overall, it's the most consistent collection of short stories that I've ever read. Like I've read a lot of different books. I've read Kafka short stories that I'm like, it was okay. It wasn't what I was looking for. It wasn't as interesting as it could have been, but that's just me nitpicking. But at the same time, Borges has something to say in each story, and I love that his stories are not actually stories. They're almost like he uses characters, and he uses the medium of fiction to prove a point, to bring you a metaphor, to bring you a paradox, and to make you question reality. And it's just, I love these stories. My favorite one is the first one, which is Tilan Akbar Orbis Tertius. That is the best story, I think, in this. Other stories I like in this is the Babylon Lottery, which is actually what we're going to go over in the members only stream this weekend. The Library of Babel is another good one. The Garden of Forking Paths, and there's another one that really stuck out. Well, The Form of the Sword. That was the one. That's the one I very much enjoyed. But that said, we will get into the last thing, because I think the last thing might be the most special of anything on this list, and that is Dante's Divine Comedy. So far, I've only read the Inferno, but just reading the Inferno alone, I feel like I have a whole new appreciation for Dante. And I never quite understood why people would reference Dante as something that is in this high regard. I was like, oh, well, the Inferno, oh, this. Like, the reputation of it, but until you actually read it, you don't understand exactly how intense this story is, because essentially what Dante is trying to do is he's trying to go to the depths of hell to go back to heaven and purify his soul. It's very much an alchemical story. Think about it that way. The Jungian idea of individuation is very much present in there, and perhaps that's where Jung somewhat got that idea from, or maybe not. But you read Dante, and the scariest thing is that I'm reading Dante in another language, and it still holds its beauty. It still holds its depth and its weight. And you're reading this story, and it doesn't read like something of fiction. It reads like something that was prophesized. It reads like something that was, a text that was studied for thousands of years, and a text that was enjoyed for thousands of years. And yet it's just a creation of one man. And There's so much to talk about Dante. There's so much to go into. I'm not going to do that here because I could be here the rest of the day, and I don't think I could even begin to explain just how great this book is. But yeah, if you have the time, if you enjoy reading poetry, if you enjoy any sort of epic poetry like the Odyssey or the Iliad or the Aeneid, you really should pick this up. It's not even heavy on the Christian symbolism. It's barely even there. A lot of the symbols he uses are Roman symbols or Greek symbols. Odysseus is in it. Caesar's in it. Brutus and Cassius and Judas is in there as well. But like the bulk of it is really like Italianish. It's so fun. It's a great book. But with that said, here are 5 works of fiction that left me speechless. Yeah, hopefully you pick them up and hopefully you read them and see that these books have a great depth to them, a great philosophical weight to them, and will force you to think. Because honestly, that's what my favorite aspect of reading is, that it forces me to think, and it forces me to think in ways that I otherwise wouldn't, or ways that I otherwise would not have saw it that way, and it just leads me to a breakthrough. It's like when you're working on a project and you're really trying hard and you have to go to the door, you have to go do something, and you come back and immediately you just look at it differently and immediately the problem's solved. That's how it is when I feel like I'm reading a great work of fiction. I feel like it explains a concept that I've struggled with my entire life, but it does it in a way where it just makes sense. And once it makes sense, I see the beauty of things. So with that said, I love you guys so much. Thank you guys so much. Peace out. I'll catch you in the next one.